Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The Lagos sun had barely risen, painting the university buildings with a golden light, when the first rumors began to circulate in the hushed corridors of the university. A story that no one would have dared imagine was taking shape. A white professor, renowned for his charisma and academic prestige, was at the center of an unimaginable scandal. In the small university cafeteria, voices rose in hushed tones, a mixture of fear and fascination. "Did you hear? 3 students, all pregnant." The word seemed unreal. Yet Aisha, Chidinma, and Funk knew it was true. Each had discovered, with horror and incomprehension, that she was carrying this man's child. 3 bright, promising young women, all victims of the same abuse of power. The tension in the city was palpable. Students murmured behind doors, while some professors averted their eyes, too intimidated to intervene. The professor, however, continued teaching with a professional smile, oblivious to the storm brewing around him. For the young women, each day became an emotional minefield. Fear, shame, anger, and incomprehension mingled, creating an almost unbearable mix of feelings. They knew that by revealing the truth, they risked not only their reputations but also causing immense shock throughout society. But silence was no longer an option. What had begun as a shameful secret would soon become a national affair, a story that would transcend the borders of Nigeria and shake the entire world. The professor, until then untouchable, would discover that no one is above the law. A light rain was falling on Lagos that morning, making the streets slippery and the sidewalks bustling with students. In a small university apartment, 21-year-old Aisha stood in front of her bedroom mirror, her hands trembling on her stomach. Her heart was pounding. How could I have come to this?" she murmured, her voice breaking. Her phone vibrated. It was Chidinma, her childhood friend. Aisha took a deep breath and answered. "Aisha, are you sure?" asked Chidinma, her voice trembling with panic. "Yes," Aisha replied. "I'm pregnant, and I think you know who the father is." A heavy silence fell on the other side of the line. Then, Chidinma burst into tears. "Me too, and Funk," she added between sobs. "I thought I was alone." Aisha felt a shiver run down her spine. 3 students. 3 lives turned upside down by the same man, the same white professor whose impeccable reputation masked scandalous behavior. Later that day, the 3 young women met in a small, discreet cafe, away from prying eyes. They were white with fear and shame, but a feeling of solidarity was growing between them. "We have to do something," declared Funk, 22, the bravest of the 3. "He can't continue to abuse his power." Chidinma nodded. "But, what if no one believes us? What if we ruin our studies?" Aisha took a deep breath and stared at her friends. "We have to at least try. For ourselves, and for all those who could become his next victims." At that moment, they were still unaware that their courage would unleash a media and legal storm that would shake not only the university, but all of Nigeria, and make them known throughout the world. The tension at the university was palpable. The corridors seemed quieter than usual, and the mere sound of footsteps echoed like a warning. Aisha, Chidinma, and Funk knew they had to act quickly, but the fear of retaliation paralyzed them. That day, they met in the university library, an almost deserted place, to discuss their plan. "We can't just stand here and wait for this to happen," Aisha said, her voice determined, though trembling. "We need proof. Messages, recordings, anything that could show what he did." Funk nodded, taking out his phone. "I kept all his conversations. The advances he sent me, the promises. He thought I'd forget everything. But now, it's all here, of course." Chidinma, the most cautious, frowned. "We'll have to be discreet. If someone finds out we're investigating him, they could get us fired, or worse." That same evening, they began gathering evidence. Aisha retrieved the professor's messages, Chidinma discreetly took notes on his interactions, and Funk saved all the incriminating photos and screenshots. Each piece of evidence was a step closer to justice, but also an enormous risk to their safety. The next day, they decided to confront the professor, but cautiously. In the classroom, Aisha stood up to ask him a question, her voice firm but controlled. "Professor, can we talk after class? It's important." The professor, surprised by the unusually serious tone, nodded with a cold smile. "Of course. We'll talk in my office." After class, in the closed office, the air was heavy with tension. "I know what you did," Aisha began, her gaze burning. "You abused your position over the three of us." The professor frowned, feigning indignation. "What are you talking about? You're making accusations without proof." Funk took out his phone and showed the screenshots. "Here are your messages. Every word. Every subtle threat. We recorded everything." For the first time, the professor's smile wavered. The impeccable facade he had worn for years was beginning to crack. "You think you can bring me down?" he murmured, his voice trembling but still full of defiance. "No," Chidinma replied clearly, "we just want justice, for ourselves, and for all those you might still hurt." In that stifling office, a silent confrontation was brewing. For the first time, they felt they held power in their hands. But they were still unaware of the extent to which this affair would shake the university, the country, and the entire world. Funk's phone vibrated incessantly that morning. Notifications piled up, messages from strangers, local news alerts, and social media posts. The scandal they had begun to uncover in secret was now out of control. In the local media, the story of the white professor accused of impregnating 3 black students was making headlines. Newspapers were running the following headlines. University rocked by sex scandal, 3 students accuse a professor. Social media erupted instantly. Hashtags such as #JusticeForStudents and #AbuseOfPower went viral in Nigeria and several other African countries. At the university, tensions were running high. The corridors, previously silent, were now filled with whispers and anxious glances. The professor's colleagues were divided, some supported the students, while others tried to downplay the matter. One evening, Aisha received a call from an international journalist. "We want to tell your story to the world," the voice on the phone said. "Your courage can inspire other victims to speak out against these abuses." Chidinma felt a wave of emotion. "We didn't think it would go this far. But if it can prevent further abuse, then we must do it." Meanwhile, the professor, once admired for his charisma and academic reputation, saw his life spiral out of control. The dean's calls multiplied, internal investigations intensified, and the media followed his every move. The confident smile that had once defined him had vanished, replaced by anguish and fear. Funk, Aisha, and Chidinma, despite the media pressure, found renewed strength in their solidarity. Each interview, each article, each report brought justice a little closer. They understood that this case was no longer just personal, it represented a fight against the abuse of power, injustice, and the silence imposed on victims. The reactions were immediate and widespread. NGOs, professors, students, and public figures denounced the professor's behavior. Social media was abuzz with messages of support for the 3 students and outrage against the institution that had turned a blind eye for too long. The scandal had now crossed Nigeria's borders. World public opinion was beginning to erupt in outrage, and the justice system could no longer ignore the case. The professor, once at the top of his game, saw his career and private life crumble under the weight of his actions. In this media storm, the 3 students knew they were on the front lines, but they were ready to stand firm. For themselves, for the truth, and for all those who might still suffer the same fate. The following months were trying. The 3 students had filed a formal complaint, and the case had taken on national and international dimensions. Every hearing was broadcast, analyzed, and commented on by the media. The professor, once adored, now appeared under the scrutinizing gaze of the entire country. The air in the courtroom was thick with tension. The judge, impartial but firm, examined the evidence, compromising messages, detailed testimonies, screenshots, and notes taken by the students. The professor's lawyers tried to downplay the facts, but the strength of the evidence made their defense seem almost ridiculous. Aisha, sitting with Chidinma and Funk, felt her heart pounding. They were nervous, but determined. They had chosen to tell their truth, and today, it would finally be heard. When the judge pronounced the verdict, a heavy silence fell over the room. The professor was found guilty of abuse of power and non-consensual sexual relations with female students under his supervision. A murmur of relief rippled through the room. The students held hands, tears streaming down their cheeks. Justice had prevailed. Outside the courthouse, the crowd cheered. Journalists, activists, and ordinary citizens congratulated the students on their courage. The professor, meanwhile, was escorted away by police. His face reflected shame, fear, and regret. His academic career was irretrievably ruined. For Aisha, Chidinma, and Funk, victory did not erase the pain of what they had endured, but it brought a sense of liberation and justice. Their story became a powerful symbol, inspiring other victims to speak out and pushing universities to strengthen their student protection policies. In the weeks that followed, the three young women participated in conferences and awareness programs on harassment and abuse of power. Their courage had not only changed their lives, but also the lives of thousands of others. And while Nigeria and the world were still reeling from the shock, one lesson remained clear: silence protects abuse, but the truth, however difficult, always triumphs in the end.